In real life, things move at a somewhat continuous path, and by default, this is how Twixtor considers source footage, as one continuous event. That is, it assumes that a given pixel in one frame must have some correlation to a pixel in either the previous or the following frame. In this tutorial, we will learn how to show Twixtor when it is actually not the case. In the case of sudden changes, scene cuts, etc., that flow is suddenly disrupted. Of course, when Twixtor sees it, it keeps on assuming that there is still some kind of movement involving the same objects that it has been seeing, and not a scene change. So Twixtor continues to create motion vectors, but most likely creating a morphing effect that you are not looking for across these edits. Take a look at our edit. It has 4 segments, 3 cuts, and a dissolve. Let's say it's going to be a commercial for traveling to Turkey. It's currently 8 seconds, but we want it to be 30 seconds or 900 frames. If we want to slow this entire edit down, we will need to pre-comp this footage like we saw in the Twixtor overview tutorial. I will go to Composition Settings and change the duration to 900 frames, and then drop that into a new comp. Let's call this new pre-comped project Marking Segments Comp. I am also going to add an audio track that I made in GarageBand, and the length is good because it extends past the new length of 900 frames. Now let's add Twixtor and go to the effects controls for Twixtor. I will make this whole edit 5 times slower using a value of 20% for Twixtor's speed percentage control. We want to add best motion vectors and motion sensitivity equals 100 and blend frame interpolation to time stretch over 900 frames. We get a result like this. Note the strange warping that occurs across the scene cuts and the dissolve transition. This is because Twixtor has no way of knowing that these are separate edits. Normally, when I'm working on something like this, say for a commercial, and the director wants to make one section a bit longer and another section a bit shorter, but there are a couple of edits included in these sections, I would take the edit apart and time stretch or shrink each section and put it all back together. But that is rather time consuming. It's much easier to do it like this using Twixtor. Let's go ahead and see how. In order to mark the edits in the source, we need to make sure Twixtor's display mode is set to source so we can see the original footage before retiming, and set the edit points in the source timing, that is before Twixtoring, and enable keyframing for the marking segments option in Twixtor. Then I go to the first frame of the edit, and in this case that would be frame 0. Here where it says source, mark segments, let's go ahead and drop down to select cut A. Next we go to the first frame after the first cut at frame 40 and drop down to select cut B. Now let's go to the first frame after the second cut here at frame 81 and use marking segments option and drop down to select cut C. Twixtor will not create any weird in-between frames upon retiming when 2 frames in the source are from differently marked regions. That is, frames marked cut A will not be in between with frames marked cut B. By doing this, the cut is preserved. Now, let's go to the first frame after the third cut at frame 107. And using the marking segments option, drop down to select cut A. Since we've already used cut A, cut B, and cut C, it's good to know here that it really doesn't matter which of A, B, and C you use. Just that Twixtor frames made from source frames marked with the same letter will have Twixtor in betweening, and those made with 2 frames from different segments will preserve the cut. The letter is arbitrary. It is just an indicator to Twixtor that it's a point being marked and not to warp between those points. So we've shown how to handle cuts. What about dissolves or other transitions where 2 or more sequences are blended together for a period of time. Twixtor can handle that too. The cut A, B, and C options are only good for preventing warps across a single frame. A dissolve or other transition has many frames where we may not want optical flow retiming, which could produce weird warps like we saw in the first example. Making sure that the display is still set to source, we can mark the first frame of the dissolve at frame 138 with no MV frame blending. Basically, this setting is a special kind of segment in the source that tells Twixtor to only frame blend frames made from this segment instead of using optical flow warping. Note that you can also use no MV nearest if you do not even want frame blending at all. The nearest setting will simply repeat frames instead of frame blending them together. Remember that when the dissolve is over, we also have to mark the first frame after the dissolve at frame 161 to cut A, B, or C so Twixtor knows to start in-betweening again. Now I set the display back to Twixtor output, and here is the final result now that we have marked these edit points in Twixtor. As you can see, we now have a much better result thanks to the marking segments option in Twixtor.